He opened the security app, expecting to catch her slipping up. 11 caregivers before her had failed, stolen from him, betrayed him, left his sons worse than they found them. So when he saw those 3 wheelchairs sitting empty in the middle of the living room, his stomach dropped. Then he saw them, his 3 paralyzed sons standing, taking steps, walking toward her outstretched arms. Andrew's phone slipped from his hand. His back hit the wall. And the man who had accepted impossible as final watched it shatter on a screen in his own living room. 2 years ago, Andrew Grant lost everything that mattered. His wife Sarah died during childbirth. 45 minutes after delivering triplets, she was gone. No warning, no goodbye, just a cold hospital room and 3 premature babies fighting for their lives. Andrew held her hand until it went cold. Then he walked out to meet his sons, Philip, Eric, Adam. 3 tiny bodies, 3 uncertain futures. The doctors didn't wait long to deliver the second blow. Cerebral palsy. All 3 boys severe, the kind that settles into muscles and bones and doesn't let go. Mr. Grant, we need to prepare you. Based on the brain imaging and muscle response tests, walking is highly unlikely. Possibly never. Andrew heard the words, but they didn't land. Not then. He was still burying his wife in his mind. Weeks passed, then months. The boys didn't improve. They didn't hit milestones. They sat in custom wheelchairs, small bodies still, eyes distant. Andrew hired the best therapists money could buy. Flew in specialists from Europe, purchased equipment that cost more than most people's homes. Nothing changed. The boys didn't walk. They barely moved. And Andrew, alone in his Connecticut mansion, started to accept what the doctors said. His sons would never stand, never run, never chase each other through the hallways like he once imagined. He buried that hope right next to Sarah. Then came the caregivers. 11 in 18 months. The first quit after 2 weeks. Said watching the boys was too sad. The second spent more time on her phone than with his sons. Andrew fired her on the spot. The third seemed perfect until he found out she'd sold photos of his boys' medical equipment to a tabloid for $600. After that, something broke inside him. One caregiver stole medication from the house. Another accessed his financial accounts and disappeared. Each one came with a smile and left with his trust bleeding out behind them. Andrew stopped seeing people. He saw risks. He installed cameras in every room, every hallway. He watched the footage at night, rewinding and zooming, looking for the lie, the angle, the betrayal he knew was coming. Control became his only protection. So when Angela Bailey walked through his front door, 29 years old, quiet, composed, Andrew didn't see a person. He saw the 12th failure waiting to happen. No improvising, he told her, not looking up from her file. No bonding, no hope speeches. Follow the medical protocol exactly. The doctors have made their prognosis clear. Angela nodded. I understand. But she didn't understand. Or maybe she understood too well. Because Angela didn't follow his rules. She sang to those boys when no one was watching. She moved their legs in patterns the therapists never taught. She whispered words of encouragement like she believed they could hear her, like she believed they could become more than their diagnosis. And Andrew watched it all through his cameras. At first, he watched to catch her making mistakes. Then he watched because he couldn't look away, because something was happening in that house. Something small at first. Philip smiled during her songs. Eric's fingers twitched when she played music. Adam held his head up longer than he ever had before. Andrew told himself it meant nothing. He told himself hope was dangerous. He told himself the doctors knew best. But late at night, alone in his office, with the blue glow of monitors lighting his face, Andrew watched a woman fight for his sons with nothing but patience and belief. And somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he thought had died with Sarah, something started to crack. He didn't trust it. He couldn't, because hope, when you've buried it that deep, doesn't feel like relief. It feels like a trap. The mansion woke up the same way every morning, quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your chest. Andrew stood at the kitchen window, coffee growing cold in his hands, watching the sun rise over the back garden. The gardener was already out there trimming hedges that no one walked past anymore. The fountain in the center of the lawn hadn't run in months. Andrew kept meaning to call someone about it. He never did. Behind him, down the long hallway that led to the east wing, he heard the soft whir of a motorized wheelchair. The morning nurse was moving one of the boys, probably Eric. Eric liked to sit by the window in the therapy room when the light came through just right. Andrew didn't turn around. He used to. In the beginning, right after they came home from the hospital, Andrew would rush to every sound, every cry, every small movement. He would sit between their cribs for hours, watching their tiny chests rise and fall, terrified that if he looked away, something would go wrong. Sarah would have been better at this. She had wanted children more than anything. 5 years of trying. 3 rounds of IVF. And when she finally got pregnant with triplets, she cried for 2 days straight. Happy tears. The kind that come when something you've wanted for so long finally becomes real. Andrew remembered the nursery she designed, pale yellow walls, a mural of elephants and giraffes, 3 cribs arranged in a half circle so the boys could see each other when they woke up. That nursery sat empty now. The boys slept in medical beds in the therapy room, adjustable frames, safety rails, monitors that tracked their breathing at night. The yellow room with the animal mural had become storage for equipment they tried once and abandoned. Andrew took a sip of cold coffee and winced. The house was too big. 27 rooms for a man who only used 3, his office, his bedroom, the kitchen when he remembered to eat. Everything else felt like a museum, preserved but lifeless. He'd bought this place for Sarah. She loved old architecture, the stone walls, the high ceilings. She said it felt like a home that had stories to tell. Now, the only stories were the ones Andrew replayed on security footage at 2 o'clock in the morning. He set the coffee mug in the sink and walked toward his office. The hallway stretched long and dim. Family photos used to line these walls. Sarah insisted on it. Houses need faces, she'd say. Otherwise, they're just buildings. Andrew had taken them down 6 months after she died. He couldn't pass her smile 20 times a day. Couldn't see the hope in her eyes. The way she looked at him like he could fix anything. He'd failed her, failed their sons, failed every promise he'd made in that hospital room when he held her hand and told her he'd take care of them. The frames left faint outlines on the wallpaper. Ghosts of a life that almost happened. Andrew pushed open his office door and sat at his desk. 3 monitors glowed on the wall: living room, hallway, therapy room. There they were, his sons. Philip sat in his blue wheelchair staring at the bookshelf. Eric was by the window just like Andrew guessed. Adam's eyes were closed, his small body still except for the gentle rise and fall of breathing. Angela moved between them, adjusting blankets, straightening toys. Her movements were slow and careful, like she understood that this room held something fragile. Andrew watched her hands. 11 caregivers, 11 failures, 11 reasons to believe she would be no different. But she'd been here 3 weeks now. No complaints, no shortcuts, no phone calls she shouldn't make or cabinets she shouldn't open. Just quiet consistency. Andrew leaned back in his chair. That's what worried him most. Angela had a routine. Every morning, she arrived in the therapy room at exactly 7. She'd greet the night nurse, review the boys' sleep charts, and then spend the first 10 minutes just sitting with them, not talking, not adjusting anything, just present. Andrew noticed this through the cameras. It bothered him at first. He was paying her to work, not to sit. But then he realized something. She wasn't sitting idle. She was watching, learning, studying the way Philip's fingers curled when he was uncomfortable. The way Eric's breathing changed when he needed repositioning. The way Adam's eyes flickered beneath closed lids during his morning rest. She was learning his sons in a way Andrew had stopped trying to. On her 4th morning, Angela brought a small speaker into the therapy room. Nothing fancy, just a portable thing she pulled from her bag. She set it on the shelf and pressed play. Soft piano music filled the room. Andrew watched from his office, finger hovering over the intercom button. This wasn't in the protocol. The boys had specific sound therapy sessions on Thursdays, administered by a licensed therapist. Random music wasn't part of the plan. But he didn't press the button, because Philip turned his head. It was small, just a few degrees to the right, but Andrew saw it clearly on the screen. His son, who spent most days staring at the same spot on the wall, turned toward the sound. Angela noticed, too. She didn't make a fuss, didn't clap or cheer. She just smiled softly and adjusted the volume slightly higher. Eric's fingers twitched against his armrest. Andrew leaned closer to the monitor. Angela knelt beside Eric's wheelchair, her movements slow and deliberate. She didn't touch him right away, just positioned herself in his line of sight and waited. "You like that?" she asked quietly. "It's Chopin. My grandmoth." The mansion's nursery sat untouched for the first time in 18 months. Dust covered everything. The 3 cribs still stood in their half-circle. A mobile of stars and moons hung motionless above them. Sarah's rocking chair sat in the corner, a folded blanket draped over its arm. Andrew stood in the doorway, unable to step inside. This was supposed to be their life. He closed the door and walked away. Friday morning, he skipped his office entirely. Instead, he sat in the hallway outside the therapy room, back against the wall, listening. Angela was inside with the boys. He could hear her voice through the door. "That's it, Philip. Just like that. See, your legs know what to do. We just have to remind them." Andrew closed his eyes. "Eric, baby, look at you. You're holding that toy so tight. You're so strong." His throat ached. "Adam, sweet boy, you watching your brothers? You're learning, aren't you? Taking it all in." Andrew pressed his palms against his eyes. What had he done? For 2 years, he'd hidden behind screens and spreadsheets. He'd paid people to love his sons because he was too broken to do it himself. He'd accepted their limitations as permanent because accepting defeat was easier than fighting for hope. And all the while his boys had been waiting for someone to see them. Angela saw them. A stranger saw what their own father had been too blind to notice. Andrew heard laughter through the door. Small and breathy, but real. One of the boys, maybe Philip, maybe all 3. His heart cracked. He should be in there. He should be the one making them laugh. He should be the one moving their legs and holding their hands. But he didn't know how anymore. Sarah had taken that part of him when she died. Andrew stood up slowly. His legs felt weak. He walked back to his office, but he didn't turn on the monitors. Instead, he sat at his desk and stared at the photo he kept in his drawer. Sarah, 8 months pregnant, glowing. Her hands rested on her belly and she was looking at the camera with so much hope it hurt to see. "I'm sorry," Andrew whispered. "Sorry for giving up. Sorry for hiding. Sorry for letting fear win." He put the photo back and opened his laptop. Not to watch footage this time. He searched for pediatric neurologists, specialists in early intervention, therapists who believed in neuroplasticity. He made a list of names, phone numbers, emails. If Angela could do this much in 4 weeks with nothing but faith and consistency, what could happen with real support, real resources, real belief? Andrew stared at the list. For the first time in 2 years, he felt something stir in his chest. Not quite hope, but close, something like possibility. He closed the laptop and stood up. It was almost afternoon. Almost time for the boys' rest period. Andrew took a breath. He wasn't ready to walk into that room yet. Wasn't ready to face what he'd become, or what he'd failed to be. But maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow he'd try. He didn't know that tomorrow would change everything. That in less than 24 hours he'd open his phone and witness something that would bring him to his knees. That his whole world was about to shatter and rebuild itself in a single moment. But for now, Andrew sat in his quiet office holding the smallest seed of belief. And somewhere down the hall, Angela was teaching his sons to walk. Thursday afternoon, Andrew sat in his office, laptop open, reviewing quarterly reports for his company. Numbers blurred on the screen. He couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting to the therapy room. It was almost 3. Angela would be finishing the boys' afternoon exercises. He'd watched the routine so many times he had it memorized. Music first, then motor pattern training, then the reaching exercises. His phone buzzed. Motion alert. Living room. Andrew frowned. The boys were supposed to be in the therapy room at this hour. He picked up his phone and opened the security app, expecting to see Angela moving them for a snack or a change of scenery. The image took a moment to register. 3 wheelchairs sat against the wall, empty. Andrew's stomach dropped. His first thought was panic. Something happened. An emergency. The nurse had to rush them somewhere. Then he saw them. Center of the living room. Hardwood floor gleaming in the afternoon light. Philip, Eric, Adam, standing. Andrew's breath stopped. His 3 sons, his paralyzed sons, the boys doctors said would never stand. They were upright, wobbly, shaking, but standing on their own 2 feet. Angela knelt in front of them about 5 feet away. Her arms stretched wide open. Tears streamed down her face. "Come on, babies," she whispered. "Come to me. You can do it. 1 step." Andrew couldn't breathe. Philip moved first. His small foot lifted from the ground, hovered, then landed again an inch forward. A step. Andrew's hand flew to his mouth. Eric went next, more cautious. His legs trembled violently, but he moved. 1 foot, then the other. 2 steps. A sound escaped Andrew's throat. Something between a gasp and a sob. Adam, the smallest, the one who kept his eyes closed. He stood there shaking, arms out for balance. Angela reached toward him. "You can do it, sweet boy. I'm right here." Adam's foot lifted. It came down. Another lift. Another step. 3 steps. Andrew watched his youngest son walk toward Angela's outstretched arms. She gathered all 3 into her arms. She held them close, sobbing openly. "I knew it," she cried. "I knew you could. I knew it." Andrew's phone slipped from his fingers. It clattered against the desk, but he didn't hear it. His knees buckled. Andrew slid down from his chair, back scraping against the desk until he sat on the floor. His legs wouldn't hold him. On the phone screen, face down but still playing, he could hear Angela's voice. "Yes." "Oh my God!" "Yes." "Look at you. Look at what you're doing." The boys reached her. She gathered all 3 into her arms, pulling them against her chest. "I knew it," she cried. "I knew you could. I knew it." Andrew sat on his office floor, unable to move. Tears poured down his face. His whole body shook. 2 years. 2 years of doctors saying never. 2 years of specialists confirming impossible. 2 years of accepting that his sons would spend their lives in wheelchairs. And there they were, standing, walking, reaching toward a woman who refused to believe what the world told her. Andrew pressed both hands against his face and wept. Not quiet tears, not controlled grief. This was something deeper, something breaking open inside him that had been locked away since the day Sarah died. Every failure, every betrayal, every night spent watching screens instead of holding his sons. The shame, the fear, the hope he'd buried so deep he forgot it existed. It all came flooding out in waves that shook his entire body. His sons could walk. His sons could walk, and he'd almost given up on them. Andrew didn't know how long he sat on that floor. Minutes, maybe longer. When he finally found the strength to stand, his legs felt hollow. He grabbed the edge of the desk and pulled himself up. His phone lay face down, still showing the living room feed. Andrew didn't pick it up. He didn't need to watch anymore. He walked out of his office on unsteady feet, down the long hallway, past the empty frames on the walls, past the silence he'd built around himself like armor. The living room door was open. He stopped in the doorway. Angela sat on the floor, all 3 boys in her lap. They were exhausted from the effort, small bodies limp against her chest. She held them like they were made of something precious. Her face was wet with tears, but she was smiling. She looked up when she sensed him there. Their eyes met. Andrew expected to see triumph in her face. Pride, a look that said, "I told you so." But that's not what he saw. He saw compassion for him. Angela didn't say anything, just watched him with those steady eyes, holding his sons like she'd always held them, like they mattered. Andrew's legs gave out again. He knelt in the doorway, unable to take another step. "How?" His voice cracked. "How did you know?" Angela looked down at the boys, then back at him. "I didn't know, Mr. Grant." Her voice was soft, gentle. "I just believed." Something broke inside Andrew. The last wall, the final barrier. He crawled forward on his knees until he reached them. His hands shook as he touched Philip's face. Then Eric's. Then Adam's. His sons. For 2 years he'd watched them through screens, loved them from a distance, kept his heart locked away because losing more would kill him. But they were here, alive, fighting, growing, and he'd almost missed it. Andrew gathered all 3 boys into his arms, pressed his face against their small heads, breathed in their scent. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." He said it over and over. An apology for every day he'd spent hiding. Every night he'd chosen fear over faith. Every moment he'd let grief steal from them. Angela quietly moved back, giving him space. But Andrew reached out and grabbed her hand. "Stay," he said. "Please." She nodded. They sat there together on the living room floor, a broken father holding his sons, a faithful woman who'd refused to give up. For wheelchairs pushed against the wall, no longer needed. Andrew looked at Angela through blurred vision. "You gave them their legs," he said. She shook her head slowly. "No, Mr. Grant. They gave themselves their legs. I just reminded them they could try." Andrew closed his eyes. Sarah would have loved this woman. Sarah would have loved this moment. And somewhere, he believed, she was watching. The afternoon light shifted through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. The house felt different now. Not empty, not abandoned. Alive. Andrew held his sons tighter and let himself feel something he'd forgotten existed. Hope. Not fragile hope. Not cautious hope. Real hope, the kind that costs everything and gives back more. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. More therapy, more work, more challenges. But for the first time in 2 years, Andrew Grant wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Because he finally understood, miracles don't need permission. They just need someone brave enough to believe they're possible.